Over the past few years, I've made multiple attempts to beat an Iron Man run of the infamous Japanese-exclusive Maniac mode of Path of Radiance, and it has, not gone well so far. But I'm hell-bent on beating it sooner or later, it's just a matter of time. Now, doing an Iron Man run of a Fire Emblem game often allows you to see certain units in a different light, and this can sometimes give you a new appreciation for them. In Path of Radiance, we all know about the staple units which always tend to carry your run, like Titania, Soren, Kieran, and Jill. But in this video, I'm going to highlight 5 often overlooked units that I gained a new appreciation for after doing multiple Iron Man runs. These are not units that will carry your run or perform amazingly every time, but rather they're units which can come in to save your neck after you've lost several of your more important ones. So without further ado, here are 5 underrated Path of Radiance characters that I changed my mind about. Let's begin. Number 1. Ranulf. Prior to my most recent Iron Man run, Ranulf is a character that I've never used in Path of Radiance, not even once. He joins incredibly late in Chapter 22, and by this point, he doesn't really bring anything substantial to the table to warrant a deployment slot. Being a Lagoose, he does have some decent stats. His speed is good, and he's unusually tanky for a cat. The problem is that unlike Leth, Ranulf does not transform instantly, so if you want him to be viable, you either have to give him a Lagoose Stone or a Demiband. Lagoose Stones are rare in Path of Radiance, and the Demiband, while allowing him to be transformed indefinitely, will reduce his stats, so he's not going to be quite as impressive with it. This places Ranulf in a very tricky spot where all he can really do is hit at one range, and sometimes he won't even deal that much damage. He may be tanky, but he'll also be a sponge for enemy javelins and hand axes, and if a fire mage happens to come near him, he'll be roasted to cinders. So why do I think Ranulf is underrated? Well, that's because he has an incredibly fast support with Ike. They build one support per chapter they are fielded together, making it possible for them to obtain an A-rank support by the time Chapter 26 Clash rolls in, which happens to be one of the most challenging parts of the game. Thanks to Ike's Earth affinity, this support gives them both 22 extra avoid, which can be a real life changer. Of course, there are better options for Ike's supports, such as Oscar or Soren, but Ranulf serves as a very good substitute if either of those were not trained or got killed prior to him joining. Also, while Ranulf may not be a powerhouse when he joins, he does have very good growth rates, and if trained, his stats will rise to the point where he can contribute in combat. He'll never be your best unit, but I found him remarkably useful alongside Ike in the late game of Path of Radiance. Number 2. Tauroneo. While Big Daddy Tauroneo didn't do much in my latest Iron Man run, he was one of the stars of the runs I did prior to that, as he cleared out most of Chapter 26 on his own. How did he do this? Well, one word: resolve. Tauroneo is a late-game general that joins you in Chapter 21, and while his bases are okay, he joins at level 14, which means he doesn't have that much room to grow. And even if he did, his subpar growth rates wouldn't make him amount to much anyway. On top of that, he's a slow general in a game dominated by strong mounted units, which doesn't seem that impressive. However, Resolve makes any unit an absolute beast, and Tauroneo comes with it for free. While he doesn't utilize it anywhere near as well as a character like Ike or Nephany when they get the scroll, Tauroneo can still get a lot done, especially if you give him some Night Ward boosted level ups to help his speed. If you give him the Wrath Scroll and boost his resistance with a Pure Water, Tauroneo can easily solo Clash on Maniac mode with a Forged Javelin or two. It is a little shaky and he can risk dying at certain points, but I still think that performance warrants him a spot on this list. Number 3. Muarim. Muarim is another one of those units that I often tend to overlook. He joins you in Chapter 16, and it can be tough to justify giving him a deployment slot as your squad is really starting to form at this point. But the beauty of Muarim is that you don't really need to field him right away. His bases are so insanely high for his joining chapter that you can easily leave him on the bench for 5 or even 6 maps, and he'll still perform just fine when you eventually bring him in. Due to being a level 9 Tiger, he doesn't gain much experience from unpromoted enemies anyway, so there's an argument for not fielding him until there's actually a need to do so. Muarim's stats and survivability are both fantastic. With 23 base strength, 18 base speed, and 45 HP, he hits like a truck and can tank hits like an absolute boss. He is somewhat reliant on the Demiband to function, as he's very slow to transform otherwise, but I find that it doesn't really hinder him all that much. He also comes with insanely good offensive growth rates, with 70% strength, 70% skill, and 55% speed. so his offense will increase greatly if you train him. He's also a great candidate for the Smite scroll, as his high build makes him able to smite pretty much anyone in your army while he's transformed, even your heavy cavalry. Overall, Muarim is a unit that definitely is not the star of the show, but he's a fantastic backup unit that you can bring in when you happen to have an extra deployment slot. Number 4. Largo. Largo is a unit I'd never thought I'd put in a video like this. Prior to my recent Iron Man run, he was a unit that just went straight to the bench. I didn't see him as having any redeemable qualities. On Maniac mode in particular, he's even worse due to Berserkers not getting the innate 15% crit boost that they do in the localized version, so he's just really a nerfed warrior. In addition to joining late, Largo is a unit with a ton of flaws. He's got decent offense for sure, but his survivability is laughable. His avoidance is not high enough to dodge tank, and once things starts hitting him, those hit points will start to deteriorate fast. However, Largo is a unit that, when trained, is almost guaranteed to cap strength and speed. And with a strength cap of 30 and a speed cap of 28, his offense is actually quite considerable. During my most recent Iron Man run, I trained Largo in the second to last chapter, using a Laguz guard to patch up his survivability, and he actually did reach a point where he started to one-round things, which is quite spectacular on Maniac mode. In the final chapter, he actually contributed quite a bit against the enemy wyverns, and he was able to kill a lot of enemies. I even gave him a mastery scroll and taught him Colossus for the lulz, even though I would never consider doing this for anything else than the meme factor. While the run eventually failed, I was surprised by how decent Largo actually was when I trained him. And at the end of the day, I don't think he's a fantastic unit, he's pretty damn average in fact, but he does have a niche that I was previously not aware of. He can step in as a replacement unit, and with a little training, contribute some very nice damage to your team. He also has a couple of very fast supports, which can greatly improve his performance. So yeah, not a fantastic unit, but definitely a lot better than I first gave him credit for. Number 5. Brom.
Brom is here!
I think a lot of you guys saw this one coming. Brom is without a doubt the unit in Path of Radiance that I was the most wrong about. Aside from the obvious meme factor, there's not a lot going on for this unit, at least not at first glance. I think if you take the entirety of Path of Radiance's roster, Brom is one of those units that most players tend not to notice. There's just nothing special about his design. He's not a cute waifu, he doesn't have any specific niches, no skills, he's just a very generic armor knight with very generic bases, and growth rates that certainly aren't bad, but there's nothing spectacular about them either. As a result, Brom is a unit that I've used pretty much 0 times in all of my regular playthroughs of the Tellius games. However, prior to attempting my recent Iron Man run, Donlot informed me that Brom, when trained, can actually be a very good unit on Maniac mode. I didn't believe him at first, but it turns out that having a unit with a strength and defense cap of 30 is pretty damn important on that difficulty. And despite the fact that my Brom got incredibly RNG screwed with really bad level ups, he still became one of the most essential units on my team, being able to tank hordes of enemies on the front lines. Using the Night Ward, it was easy for me to get his speed up to a point where he would even reliably double enemies, and with a Forged Javelin in hand, his offense was terrific, completely saving my butt during Clash, where he carried the front lines alongside his support partner Nefany. Now, of course, I did give Brom a lot of favoritism during that run. I gave him stat boosters and even the boots. But I argue that it was a good investment, because Brom was able to stay alive for most of the run. Sure, I could have given the boots to a better unit like Jill, but I lost her during the same run, so the boots would have been completely wasted on her. Brom was able to take those boots and be a reliable tank throughout most of the run, and at certain points, he seemed nigh unkillable. However, Brom is not without his flaws, and those flaws did come back to bite me in the final chapter when he fell due to a critical hit from a red dragon. You see, Brom's luck is kinda garbage, and while you can give him goddess icons, it still won't go very high on its own. This only matters against the very scary enemies like dragons, however. Other generic enemies didn't end up doing much damage to Brom even when they did end up critting him, and for this reason, Brom is actually a unit that is far more useful than I first thought. Of course, a unit like Gatry can fill the exact same role due to his class, and his stats may even turn out a little bit higher than Brom, but still, I was surprised to see how good Brom actually was when properly trained and properly supported. He ended up being the absolute star of my run, and I think that definitely warrants him a spot on this list. So yeah, those are the 5 underrated units I changed my mind about in Path of Radiance. Do you agree with my lists? Do you think there are any other characters who should be on here? Let me know about it in the comment section below. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more Fire Emblem content. My name is Mengs, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye!